Hello, welcome back to the Content Power Hour.
Yay!
And to go and start everything off, I feel like we need a really big question. Morgan,
We are
any
getting
ideas?
some echo on your end, Brooklyn, just by the way, if you wanted to mute in between things, I guess.
I'll just stay muted the whole time. Yeah.
No.
Sorry for just so everybody knows who's joining why we're late. It's all me and my technical difficulties.
It's totally okay. We're
It
happy
happens.
to be here. Nick, it's funny. We always kick off. So everyone who's joining us, we always have a question of the day to warm up the comments. We want to hear from you. We want to say hi, hello, all the rest of it. But I totally spaced on what question we decided it on. So what's our question?
What is the last impulse purchase you made? You know, scrolling through Tiki, going on LinkedIn, walking through, they have all the things like right beside you when you're going through waiting for the cashier and you grab a chocolate bar or whatever. What was your last impulse purchase?
If you're here with us, we want to see you in the comments. Drop it below. We'd love to see it. Sam, what was your last impulse purchase?
Yeah, so I was scrolling through Instagram and I don't know exactly what it's called, but I saw this carpet scraper. It's like a tool where you like scrape, it gets pet hair,
Okay.
all the things out, and you can scrape like the corner like by your baseboards. And
is that as seen on TV?
I don't know if it's on yeah. So yeah, that was my last impulse buy, and it actually it worked so good. It was pulling the carpet up, so I couldn't really use it. So I was excited to try it though because I have a dog and I just wanted to like do it on the stairs. And in the commercials, it's like dark carpet, white carpet. It didn't work quite that great though.
That's really funny.
Mine was no carpet. I was
like, I was trying to think what my last impulse purchase was a hand grinder for coffee, which is a really like niche impulse purchase. But the reason it was an impulse buy is that I already had one and I didn't need another one. But I saw it, and I think I was watching like a YouTube video review and sort of like going through different coffee hand grinders. And I was like, oh yeah, that looks really nice. And so then I went and got it. And it's lovely. I enjoy it a lot. We don't have a lot of like counter space here. So I don't have like a fancy burr grinder or something to use all the time. So it's a nice like replacement at least, I think. But I'm sure there's something bigger. I just, that was the first thing that popped into my head.
That's the name of the game. First thing that pops in your head.
Yep.
Brooklyn?
Mine's boring comparatively. I think I bought chips the other day. I bought jalapeno chips.
It's a good time.
Can't resist.
Mine was very similar. But I was just going through the grocery store and I was like, I haven't had cookies in a while. I'm like, you know what? I haven't had chips either. And actually, I haven't had pop in like ages. And next thing I know, I look like a high school kid going through the till and it's like all junk. And I'm like, the lady looks at me and she's like, wow. It's like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it. I don't need you to judge my life choices right now. The funnier one was I was going through and somebody had this like crystal clear camera and he was doing like this zoom out, zoom in, goes in the backyard and in the dark and it's like crispy. And I'm like, God, that looks really, really good. And I'm like going through like the form click and I'm going. And I'm like, yeah, like I'll buy this. And then it comes to the form and it was $9,995 plus lens plus.
Nope. It's a little pricey.
Yeah, maybe down the road.
Uh-huh. So, Nick, do you want to introduce and contextualize what this Content Power Hour is and what we do here?
Yeah, I think it's always good because we have the curse of knowledge and we're kind of stuck in our boxes. And when we get stuck in our box, sometimes it's really hard to think from the buyer standpoint. What is the experience like? What And we don't always audit all the time either. So when a buyer is going through this experience, is it a maker or a breaker? And so the content power hour is looking at when you're going inbound, if you're going to get a demo, if you're going to buy something new, that, big impulse purchase, what does that look like from the buyer's standpoint? And mostly we don't get to go through this, right? And so here we are. We're going to go and look at two amazing companies, Quantum Metric and Fullstory. And we're going to look at what it's like to be in the buyer's shoes.
Mm-hmm. So I get to kick us off. Each of us have our own little areas that we're auditing. I'm in charge of messaging. So Brooklyn is looking at content, Sam is evaluating social, and Nick is looking at the inbound sales process. So we are each taking a component of what the buyer sees on inbound, since as the hashtag Beam Team, Brooklyn and Sam say, the content doesn't just live in one area. It's everywhere. It's through the whole buying experience. So, shall we just get started with Quantum Metric?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. So, from a messaging perspective, I have to add context. I think both of these companies are fairly close. And I think the challenge from a messaging perspective is that they're fairly close. I think there are some differences between the two, and I'll explore that when we get to Fullstory. But I think the challenge that I had overall was understanding fairly quickly why I should go with one versus the other. And it's the problem with that, I think, comes back to like, who's it for and what's it for? Is it clear who they're selling into? Is it clear what they're doing for those buyers? So I think the Quantum Metric, just from the website, and this is sort of the mainstay of the messaging, I think some of the things that really stood out that were really, really good. Their teams pages, like the specific use cases, the marketing page, the IT ops page, etc. Those were amazing. They were so clear. They were very concisely written. It used jobs to be done language. Like if I was a marketer and I landed on the marketing page, I was like, oh, I can do this with this tool. Like that was sort of the thing that popped up. And that's amazing. And that's really good and something that I admire them for. Same thing with some of their niche product pages. So inside their platform, they sort of have like these top level platform pages of, let's see here, like in their menu, it's uncover customer friction, optimize key experiences, some of those things that also link from the homepage. And then beneath them, there's like specific feature pages. So there's like an experience alert page or a product analytics pages. Those are really good in the sense that they're very detailed. And going through that, I understood what the product did, how I could use it. There's some like good graphics, but also the language, the copy itself was like pretty straightforward. Like reading it, I was like, oh, okay, I understand this. I think the problem that Quantum faces is when they start to aggregate it to some of their top level pages, and their homepage is good, but it's not great. And I think the problem mostly is a lot of the specificity that they're able to attain in those sub pages sort of blurs out like a Gaussian blur kind of by the time somebody hits the home page. So it's sort of like, oh, this is interesting. And then I'm sure some of that is sort of like trying to tempt somebody to click so that they go to the sub page. But then even to get to that specificity from just the homepage and nobody's using the menu, it's at least 2 or 3 pages in. And to me, that doesn't really feel like a great user experience or like a huge opportunity to lose out customers simply because the stuff on the homepage is really vague. I like the cute. I like a good pun. Never lose sight of your customer. That's a cute pun. But I think the issue that I had was understanding just from like a top level thing, what do they do? And I think some of that's because the platform is so big and they're sort of struggling under the weight of articulating it all. It's fairly clear that they sell into enterprise. Quantum does. And the platform is built for that. And so maybe that works in the sense of like, however they're doing their inbound marketing motion, that it is going to be a specific user and they are going to want to click around. But overall, I was like impressed, but also kind of like, yeah. I think the one little thing that actually irritated me were there were a lot of buttons that said like watch a demo or watch a product tour. And then when you clicked on it, it was a gated form. And to me, there are other buttons that say like book a demo or like get a tour or some of these. So they're like alternating through these languages. And those to me, I understand book a demo as like a gated form. That's what I expect. But when there's like watch a product tour or like watch it in action, and I click that button, and then it's like, and there's actually one page which is like, there's like 5 options. This is a really weird UX thing. You like click see it in action, and then it pulls up 5 different product tour options, and then you're supposed to click one, but then each one that you click has a gated form to actually watch it. And to me, it just feels like such a missed opportunity to clarify and articulate like what you do and how you help people. And it feels like it's built to capture data and not to help buyers buy. And particularly with like the buttons that say watch a demo, when I clicked it, I was like, oh yay, I get a demo. And then I was like, oh no, I don't get a demo. And and then I bounced, and I was like, all right, I'm out. I'm gonna go see something else, right? So anyways, those are the overall messaging. Out of 10, I think we're scoring this, right? I think Quantum is at a solid 7. I think there's some good room for improvement just around clarity, but I think they cover a lot of the good fundamentals, particularly further in the journey.
Well said. Now, are you gonna go and do Fullstory next, or are we gonna go run all the way through Quantum and then switch after?
Let's do all of Quantum, and then we'll go to Fullstory. So then it's one cohesive thing. Does that work?
Let's do it.
All right. Is Brooklyn? Yeah, Brooklyn's next.
I'm up next. Now I want to find that page with the 5 different CTAs and options.
I know. Let me see if I can find it.
Ignore the irony that it's a digital experience company and you bounced because there were too many options on the screen for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so my notes might make more sense once we also get to Fullstory, because I felt like they were the inverse of each other. Whereas, so Quantum Metric felt like there was a lot of conversational content, a lot of personality there with lots of different team members owning the byline. But then the content strategy didn't feel super clear or robust. And Fullstory, when we get to it, is kind of the inverse of that. Number one, this is very much a side note or a PS, but I'll start with it. I love the blog name. It right up top says "to be continuous," which I just thought was, you mentioned a pun too, Morgan. It made me smile. Overall, I know we're not talking solely SEO, but it doesn't seem like they have a great SEO presence considering their domain authority, their presence in the space. Like they've got great reviews and outperform some of their competitors when it comes to review sites. So I was kind of surprised to see them not have that many organic visitors. On SEMrush, at least, it was showing like 9,000. And I think that's because of this sounds super, I don't know, categorical or fatalistic, blunt maybe. But I think it's because the content strategy, like I wasn't seeing the content strategy in the content that I saw on their site. Like they have sorry, I'm blanking today. A healthy publishing cadence. Like they've been publishing a lot of content, but it seems like there's a gap in what their content is covering and what I imagine their audience is actually interested in. I saw a lot of general trends type of stuff, like how inflation is turning retail on its head, a lot of product focused content, which for me, like my perspective, that's usually a kind of a turnoff for me. If it's like all in on here's our position in the space, here's commentary on why we're so great, here's how to use our product to do X, Y, Z. Or if it was vertical specific into the particular industries that they sell into, it was still kind of general. Like how mobile tech trends in baking vary across generations. So it all felt very high level and not very much content that got into the specifics of what they do. Like you said, Morgan, like from their menu and their different features pages is super clear. It's like, oh, cool. I didn't know you could do that. Like, that's great. I want to learn more about that. But there wasn't a lot of content that spoke to how to do that. So big picture, there wasn't just a lot of like quote unquote long tail in SEO or hyper specific in the weeds type of content, which I imagine is hurting their SEO rankings and probably their engagement, like time on page and conversions from the content that they're putting out. So big picture on content strategy. The good side, I did see a lot of personality in their content. For the most part, struck a very conversational tone. I really liked that different team members owned bylines, from the co-founder to the VP to others on, like it was clear they brought in a lot of perspectives on what they were writing. I just think I would have liked to see some more specificity. Rank, rating. Was this our third time doing it? I feel so mean every time. Maybe like a 5.
Okay.
Give it a 5.
Nice. A 5.
I feel like I was overly generous last time. I was like giving 9s out, so I'm trying to compensate this time.
It was one question I have, because this sort of like bridges this messaging content conversation, Brooklyn, is that it felt the continuous product design almost felt like tagged on. Like, I know it's some category sort of marketing that they're doing, and they're trying to articulate, I think, some of the differences between them and maybe just like digital, or the way Fullstory's DXI, the category Fullstory identifies with. It just never felt like it, like there wasn't like the full gel to me. And I don't know if you saw that, if that felt the same way in the content, where there was like, here's our method, and then it didn't appear anywhere else.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Another flip side of Fullstory, because with Fullstory, because I feel like that did get pulled through pretty clearly. Whereas it felt like a lot of the content felt like positioning, when content shouldn't. Like maybe 20% of content can be positioning, but 80% of it should be education and engagement, and I wasn't seeing that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Can we talk about the category thing for a second, though? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. Like, as a buyer, I mean, I'm not a buyer for them, but as a buyer, I imagine it's confusing to be like, oh, 2 similar products. One says it's continuous design something or other. The other says it's digital experience something or other. Then there's product analytics, which really these are product analytics ones, but they're trying to own a category. Like, how could, like, at what point does trying to own a category become problematic for your buyers?
It's interesting. Oh, sorry, Nick. Did you want to?
I was going to say that coming from sales, product and feature dumps never win. What wins is the way the pain is seen and felt in the customer's hands. And I feel like the time that category goes astray is when we lose sight of the objective. And so if I can't tell the way the pain is felt on the landing page in 3 different angles, framed in the way that it's actually impacts their business, that to me is where the struggle begins. Because now your hierarchy of information, you're like, yeah, I have that problem. Oh, what? Like, it's like when you do a good prospecting call, like, how do you know that? Because you're tapping into that internal narrative that they have in their head. And I feel like the moment that you prioritize your category over the way the pain is felt by your customer, you lose.
Yeah, I feel like the issue, I think it's just very expensive to create a category. I mean, it's expensive in many ways, time and money especially. Because I think ultimately the issue in this case is that the way the website articulates the reasons you should buy comes back to the product and feature set and doesn't have anything to do with continuous product design. And Fullstory mirrors that in some ways, but they accomplish it in differently, which we'll get to. I think the problem with Quantum is it's like, here's this amazing product. Oh, and also we do this CPD thing that's sort of like half wrapped around it. And instead of continuous product design is something all product managers or IT ops people should be using, and our platform enables you to accomplish it, which I think is probably the goal of the messaging, but it's just not articulated that well in this case. So, or that clearly. So I think categories are fine, but like ultimately it's not, if the, as Nick said, if the buyers don't care about it, it's not really a big difference. I think.
Yeah. If the rest of the messaging is clear, as long as you're tying it full circle. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, that's, and I think about maybe it's like Pep, Laya, who always talks like the reason ConvertKit, I mean, every email marketing software is basically the same. The reason ConvertKit wins in its category is that it's email marketing for creators. So like ultimately the story that, or the messaging I think about in that case is that it's all creator focused, and all of the product and feature sets are just supportive of the idea that it's built for creators. And that could be a nice little mirror analogy to think about for Quantum, of like we're the platform for continuous product design or for product managers, and these are the things that enable you to do that. I don't know. There's some room for improvement, I think. That's enough for me.
I like it.
You've been cut off.
Yeah.
Can I unmute Morgan or?
Yeah, I'll jump into social, which it's interesting because they're very similar as well. I thought the ratings were really close, which I might be giving too much away, but I feel like they're like a point away. I was trying to, which made me want to reevaluate it. I'm like, are they really this close? But there weren't major differences that jump out, which made this a little bit interesting. But yeah, I'll start. So a little more general, like overall impressions. I thought it was interesting what we were just talking about, because one of my first impressions was the tagline, like the leader in continuous product design, which I was thinking I would update that tagline. Like, I want to know why I should follow them, like what I'm going to get out of following them, what they're going to teach me, that kind of thing. Like, what am I coming here for? And that just didn't resonate with me on LinkedIn. Another like just general impression was they're getting good engagement. I used like Scott Ingram's formula where you like tally up the last 10 posts and divide it by the number of followers to get the engagement rate. And it was 3%, which is above average. And so that's great. Where I noticed the engagement lacking was more so in the comments, which I have some ideas, like some adjustments that I think could be made. And then just like, I do see a lot of those stock photos, like Canva templates. That was just kind of like my jumping on the page, what I saw. But as far as the content goes, like I like to start with what I think is working, like what the things that I liked. And they feature and present their leadership as experts a lot. I noticed that their C-suite was presented as an expert a lot. They have posts that are featuring them on other podcasts and such on their LinkedIn, which was great. And I also noticed from their site, like over and over, the motto, like people are at the heart of everything we do. And so, I thought I like how they're incorporating people into their social. And I would enjoy seeing even more of that probably. And then as far as what could be improved, like Brooklyn was talking about this conversational tone that they have on the blog. I wasn't seeing that like pulled through to social as much. It's more formal. I think like the language could be more simple and relatable. Like just seeing essential, key to unlocking, like providing next level, like those kind of tagline type things that just don't resonate as well. And then the last like area for improvement, before I'll jump into some ideas, they aren't repackaging the content for social specifically. It's more like short 3-sentence summaries driving people to click the link. So like I personally probably wouldn't follow the company account to learn really, because like I don't personally click links. Like I would need to be educated or entertained by their feed in order to actually like make the follow. Some ideas that I had was, I think it would be really cool if they show off some companies who have like stellar buying experiences or who go above and beyond for the customer and like show why. So like not just telling, but like showing real examples, or even like very novel buying experiences. I think if they like showed real examples, that would resonate really well. And I think coming onto their LinkedIn, I would be like, oh, these people really understand great buying experiences. I want to make my buying experience like that. And they work with really recognizable brands. Like I saw Lululemon, Bass Pro Shops. So I think they could like play that up a little bit more, maybe in some of those stories. Then on the flip side, I thought there could be some really great meme-worthy content around like companies who just get the buying experience completely wrong. Like the relatable, like horribly frustrating or rage quitting examples. I just thought like they could kind of play those two like competing experiences up on their social, and that could make it like a really fun but educating experience on social. So yeah, the biggest improvement I think is just like creating posts that have standalone insight, and then also using their own voices to amplify it a little bit more. Like as far as employee advocacy goes, I saw like people with big followings, but just not taking advantage of it as much. Like their CMO is the most active, I noticed from everything I was looking at, but still not super consistent. So I think there's a big opportunity there. And the rating was so tough. But I feel like I haven't been overly generous up to this point. Like I've kind of leaned the other way a little bit, but I would say 5 out of 10. That was the rating that I felt was fair, because we're like going in the right direction, but there's like halfway, to make up in terms of some of those improvements. So
That makes me feel better. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, your rating was a 5 out of 10 too. So I feel like
we're on the same page.
with the social.
That's great.
All right. I've got an aside question for you, Sam. A while back, I asked people for their spiciest marketing take, and somebody said Canva is the worst thing to have happened to marketing. Is that a thumbs up from you or a thumbs down? Nothing in between. You got to say agree, disagree.
I'm not allowed to have any nuance.
No nuance.
I'd say no.
Twitter, there's no nuance here.
It's not the worst thing to happen. Because I love Canva.
Morgan,
That's great.
Bert taking the marketing out of marketing? You couldn't say your usual. It depends.
It depends. I know.
No, it depends loud.
No, it depends.
Yeah, that was tough. I was about to give a very like nuanced, but I guess I'll just have to stick with my no.
It's great. All right, Nick, do you want to talk about the inbound journey?
So I have to say that Quantum Metric does a good job on knowing who they're talking to. And they streamline this really fast. So when you go and book a demo, you get an email almost instantly. When they go and bring you in and they do that first email, you're vetted right from there. So they enrich the data and they don't waste your time. So they have a really clean process. But what I found really interesting is what doesn't get said in this process. And I believe originally they had an enterprise sales motion, very traditional, cold call, email heavy. But what I've noticed over the last little while is that all their executive team posts and they have a voice. And I'm wondering, because the inbound process in terms of like their content didn't seem as clear on their website, but it was actually better articulated and they own their voice on social. So I'm wondering if they're actually moving to a more demand gen focused funnel. And that's why their demo form is so clean and fast. Because with enterprise, you want to capture their attention where they are. And I'm wondering also too, if it's not an ABM play.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know what I wouldn't see it because I'm not one of their buyers, but I'd be curious to see at the quality of their creative on their ABM strategy and how far they're taking that. If they're going more of the gifting route, I didn't see it any of the job descriptions. I was searching, but I couldn't find it. But I'm curious if that's not where they're going and they're actually leaning more on the demand gen side, because what they're trying to do is that trust and credibility on the senior leadership to show where they're going, and they're bringing that company on the journey with them on that experience design. I'm curious if that's where they're going. And that's something I'd love to see if it trickled back into their content as well, so that it went from like LinkedIn profile to demo form, or LinkedIn profile to content resources to demo form, some type of nurture through content. But what I found really interesting is this broke up as soon as we got to the individual sellers. And they did the standard reshare. Honestly, it's just garbage. People don't follow you to be a promo reel. People follow you because they value your opinion and they trust you. The moment you take your voice away from yourself, you lose your integrity in the market. And I'd love to see these guys really own that narrative on social, because I feel like they're sitting on a gold mine and they're just not tapping. Like you were saying, Sam, like they've done such a good job on the executive leadership and leading by example. I would love to see that just trickle down more into the individual sellers, because I think it would add a lot of credibilities to their profile and bring that magnet from all the employee advocacy, not just one person, that it would have, they'd be a force to be reckoned with, and really set the example of experience design for the whole organization. So I would say, I don't know, I was kind of hovering between a 6 and a 7, but I know I have to pick one. I'm going to give them a 7 because their actual like inbound form, when you actually get there, like they know who they're talking to and they don't waste your time. There's no 15-minute qualification meeting, because quite frankly, there's enough tech out there to figure that out fast, and it's a waste of everyone's time to do a 15-minute meeting. So I would give them a 7 out of 10. They did that really well. If they dialed in their social, I wouldn't be surprised if within 6 months they could be a 9 or a 10 if they just dialed that in a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And when you talk about social and like sharing perspective, is that something you would have liked to see, like not top of funnel, like once you're actually in their flow, like if you would see more of that content from their reps on social, that would have been a positive indicator for you?
Well, this is a big purchase. Like when you're doing, this is a transformative purchase, not a transactional purchase. And unless I have enough trust, what are we going to keep doing? As a buyer, what I would do is I'd throw bodies at it. Oh, we actually got to go and bring in this person too. Oh, we got to bring in this person. Next thing you know, we got 20, 30, 40 people on the buying committee, because there's not enough trust and credibility and nobody's willing to say no. But when you have social and you have all this credibility and you're looking at it from different angles, from different personas, there's people buy when they're confident. And I feel like that's where the social would come in, is that confidence level. And I would love to see the sellers own that, because everybody brings their own experience to the table. So the way they explain the stories will highlight a different point of view. And so there's, of course, the top of funnel, but I think in funnel is also like guiding through that deeper part of the process that really, where does most transformative deals fail? Change management. Because nobody looks at the implementation costs and what it actually takes to see the full value of the product. And that's kind of the gear I'd love to see them shift, is midway through that is, how can you see that content? Maybe there's like a really tailored experience post and we just don't see it because they do it more from the point of contact to the actual close of the deal. And maybe they nurture that way. And that's why I was kind of wondering if it was more an ABM play, but we can't see it. So I'm not sure. That's why I'm wondering, I'm kind of on that teetering of like, it could be actually a lot better than we see. I just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Well, a hearty thank you to Quantum Metric, as judged by this crew, scored a 24 out of 40, which is just the aggregate of our score, which is actually pretty good if you've attended before. That's actually a pretty good score. We're not an easy audience, so yay! Thanks, Quantum Metric. Shall we move on to Fullstory?
Giddy up.
All right. So I think Fullstory has a jargon issue. in their messaging. And I think it's easier to do sort of a compare and contrast here. Looking at the two sites, I think Quantum, had sort of struggled with vagueness, but I think Fullstory sort of struggles with jargon. And it's funny, Sam and I were actually chatting before we went live today, and I think I understood Fullstory because I had read Quantum's site first. And I think that's not a great position to be in as a company. Now, I don't think like that means you necessarily have a poor messaging. I actually think there's some really, really nice pieces of the site. I have to give credit where credit is due. I think it's trademarked even. You have this feature set called Rage Clicks. That's great. That's first of all great branding, but it's also great messaging to talk about frustration signals as rage clicks. Like that's wonderful. And I also think some of the more niche pages that you find either within specific teams or specific product uses, all of those really spoke clearly to what the product does and how it can help people. And similarly, actually, I'm trying to remember. Oh, it's the Why Fullstory page. They have, unlike our quantum friends, they have the benefit of not having to articulate their own category. And so they're just saying we are a part of this digital experience intelligence, which is, I believe, even a category that G2 uses. So there's some credence from the industry at large. They're not trying to swim upstream against them, which is nice. And I think a lot of that language on those pages does clearly articulate like why us and what we can do for you. But similarly, I think both Quantum and Fullstory struggle with the fact that their product sets are pretty large. Like one thing that both company offers is an entire company called Hotjar. So like Hotjar is its own company, and Hotjar is just one of the product features that both Fullstory and Quantum offers. So I think there's some like, again, struggling under their own weight. And I think the way Fullstory goes about trying to, I don't know, tell that story is not as clear or concise to the buyers as maybe Quantum was on this, particularly some of the specific pages. I do have to say, give credit where credit's due. I'm not sure if this is great language, but it's great to see it again and again, is they have basically 3 key results that continue to pop up on every single page. And on their product page and their sub pages, it's like increase revenue through better conversions, improve organizational efficiency, and boost customer growth and retention. And they're using the same graphics, they're using the same sub descriptors. Every product page, at some point, you scroll down and you're going to see it again. And like, that's great. I was like, yeah, hammer home those benefits. What I don't know is if those are benefits from customers' language or if that's just like marketing lingo. Like, do customers actually come to you begging for organizational efficiency? Or is there a different way to articulate the way engineers are going to work with this problem that speaks to organizational efficiency that maybe is a more casual or succinct way of saying those things in the customer's language? So the only other thing that really stood out to me is it's a little less clear, and maybe this is some of the issues too, whether they're selling only into enterprise, because a lot of their case studies are more like commercial or like large startups, or whether they're selling across like a larger mid-market to enterprise motion. And the reason I bring that up back to the who's it for and what's it for is a lot of their case studies, or excuse me, a lot of the logos on the homepage are like big names, but a lot of the case studies are smaller names. And that was an interesting like like they have JetBlue and GNC. And then I'm trying to remember where I'm just like pulling up, coming back to their like travel and hospitality section, they have Flight Center, Travel Plus Leisure, Zipcar, and Iceland Air. And a couple of those are case studies that you can actually read. And that's, to me, I wish there was just some more like harmonious messaging, basically. a more succinct way of talking about who they're serving. But I think the top level header, the main struggle bus here is it's fairly jargony, and it's a little difficult to sort of mentally piece out, because it's not entirely clear they're only selling to a technical audience, and they're based on their other resources on their website and how they're articulating their product. If they're only selling to engineers, then like, sure, whatever, that's fine. I'm not an engineer. I'm not the audience here. But it felt a little bit broader than that. Sorry, there's a lot of noise going on here. I would say an overall score is probably a 5 out of 10 on messaging. So I think there's some larger room for improvement.
Brooklyn, any questions for Morgan, or are you ready to dive right in?
I mean, I was a little surprised by the rating, to be honest, even with the explanation.
Too harsh?
No. I mean, I gave the last one. I was a 5, so yeah, you do you. Did you see? So when you say, just one question, sorry, I feel like I've had a question every time. When you're talking about jargon, I see that on the nav, like the menu. But did you see that through the product pages too? Like once you clicked into frustration signals, for example, or tagless auto capture?
No, I think some of the specific feature sets are pretty good. It's actually really interesting. I think there's a compounding problem here, which is that the visual style of the pages actually aren't all that clear. Like my eyes easily gloss over sections, which also makes like my brain skip important words. But that's a whole other thing. I think the example that I have is like, even though they have rage clicks as sort of this like trademarked, term for frustration signals, the way that they actually talk about it in most of their pages are frustration signals. And like rage clicks only shows up like 3 out of every 7 or 8 times that they're mentioning it. And I understand there's maybe a balance there to be had between like explaining what it is or building interest. But to me, is like such an obvious example of like, you trademarked this term, use it, instead of opting for the more technical terminology, I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
Or jargony, as you would put technically. The jargony term.
It's jargony, yeah. And it's not
Jargon-ish,
like jargon-ish.
Yeah.
Jargon-ish, yeah.
Gotcha. That makes sense. On the content side, it tracks with what you were talking about, especially the last part where you're saying, like, you don't imagine, especially because it's an enterprise product, they're not selling just to technical buyers. And that really came out in the content in a great way. So the first thing I saw when I jumped on the site is clearly this is enterprise focused. So how does the content match that? And going back to what you were talking about, Nick, about on the social end, like speaking to multiple personas on the buying committee, like I feel like their content really accomplishes that from what I saw. So they have like really well thought out, detailed top of funnel category awareness and education content. Like I think one of their best ranking or trafficked articles is all things quantitative data. Like probably most of their buyers don't need to be told what quantitative data is, but the fact that they have a whole resource page that really details it, like positions themselves as an authority in the space, right? And then they follow that through with like really succinct long tail articles, like journey maps for onboarding, pinch to zoom, what is that and why is it important? And they don't arbitrarily like give it 1,500 words with a ton of fluff. Like they're really short and sweet. I think probably like 400 or 500 word articles, which was pretty cool to see because you don't have to like stretch this out. You can just get to the point on things like pinch to zoom. And then they also balanced it with story-based content. So they had one on like their engineering interns sharing what they learned over the summer. They had a lot of vertical specific content, like must-read quotes for digital experience in travel and hospitality. And then they also had thought leadership. So they had one from a co-founder about product analytics as a science, auto capture, speaking of the jargon, but auto capture is a catalyst. And I feel like by reading that, I got a better understanding of what they do, the kind of their philosophy, even a little bit more of the quote unquote jargon, like auto capture. So there are really like 5 areas of content, those 5 I just walked through, that they are consistently hitting on, which I think is really hard to do. So props to the team for like kind of managing all of those areas rather than keeping it all high level or going super product specific. The one area of improvement I saw was that even though their content had a lot of specificity, it didn't have a lot of personality. Like the bylines were often from the team, like Fullstory editorial team or something like that. It was very much from like the brand voice rather than I'm this person with this experience talking about XYZ. I think the 2 exceptions were the intern sharing their stories and then the thought leadership piece from the co-founder. Like that's the one that I found myself reading all the way through just because I thought it was really interesting. And it was more about like philosophy of product analytics, which brought it home for me. So yeah, just some personality and I think more of a conversational tone rather than like this brand, kind of stiff brand voice. Like the example I wrote down is before a list of bullets they had, using a scroll map has many different benefits, here are the benefits. Like you can just change it up a little bit, especially when you're talking to so many different people. So long story short, I think the content strategy is clearly there and solid, but I do wonder what like their engagement looks like time on page and their bounce rates, considering doesn't really feel like it pulls you in consistently. Can't give half scores, so I'll do an 8 out of 10, just because like the strategy really, like covering those 5 areas consistently, I think is really hard to do. So that was a bonus. I think that'd be at like 9.5, but the personality piece was the missing piece.
Wow. High praise from Brooklin Nash.
Yeah.
That's great. Sam.
Let's see if Sam agrees.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that coming through in social with like adding in a bit of personality and such. But like one of my overall impressions, like one of them, and I think it was me comparing to Quantum Metric, was like I can tell that they're going for a more casual tone on social. Just like it's a little, even compared to their blog, like they're using emojis, they're using a little bit more of I did run into the jargon a little bit, but in comparison between the 2, I felt like I could tell they're going for that more casual tone. And yeah, some of their posts get really great engagement, but I noticed it's like inconsistent. Their engagement rate is 2%, so about average. But yeah, as I think there's still too much of like the promotions happening, so you have to like scroll through quite a bit of, and then there's you have to scroll through a bunch of promotions, and then there's some good posts sprinkled in, basically, is how I was just like my general when I first went through it. Yeah, so there were some posts that I did really like, and where they were not just like summarizing the post and getting right to the link. And they were actually like including value directly in the posts. I was finding the posts like that. Still just though the ratio was off, is what I was seeing. And yeah, so this is kind of similar feedback that I had before, but I'd love to see more stories. Like there's a lot of stories on the blog that I just thought were really interesting because they serve, like they have big name customers and with really interesting use cases. So like one of the customers that I saw was Rank, who runs like the largest chain of casinos and bingo venues in the UK. And so I found a post about it, but so right now, like the post would go something like, they had a siloed view of the customer journey, or like they needed to resolve a time sensitive browser based promotion error. And
Goodness, yeah.
I had a little trouble like reading that. No, I think like the readers would enjoy like a small story around like sports betting, how sports betting is supposed to work and how it went wrong. Like I would just be fascinated, even though like I don't bet on sports. Like I just, even reading that, I'd be like, oh, this is cool. I think it would get a little bit more to the why. Like here's why, you know, what we do matters, and like, or the real impact that it has. And it would give me more context. Like what does end-to-end view of the customer journey like actually mean? And they have such cool use cases that they could be pulling into social.
Jackpot, right? Like, gosh, there's so much. You saying that immediately just like generated all these ideas of
Right.
not just puns, but great stories, as you pointed out, that you could tell.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. Yeah, so that, I think that's my biggest piece of feedback. I had like another little thought is that a lot of times what I saw from them that I see a lot on company pages is like just stealing words from the intro of an article for the post. Sometimes that works, like when the intro is really, really good and well written, but usually like it's not that good. And you have to like dig into the article more to pull out an insight that will make the post like really valuable. So that was just something I noticed. I was like, oh, I recognize these words in the intro of the article, and they're kind of like pulling that into their story versus being like, oh, what is the story being told in the article that I could kind of surface into the social post. So I know I want to leave time for Nick, so maybe I'll just like jump to my rating. 6 out of 10.
Not to make you nervous. Oh.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, Drew just joined. He had some content. Like, not to make you nervous before you give the rating.
Man, I just like jumped the gun there.
Go for it.
It was so hard because, and I thought it was so, yeah. I just like, I think they're close with the right approach. Like I can see it coming through, but like could continue investing in like those value first posts and scale back on the promotions and get that ratio like a little better. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you guys will appreciate this, but it's almost like a which came first, the chicken or the egg? And I'm guessing which came first was the outbound, and then the HubSpot style inbound with content clusters. It's kind of the jive that I get from reading everything. And I feel like social is going to be the next big push, but it's not quite there yet. But I see a lot of the, like what happens a lot of time when it's a very outbound driven company on their sales motion, when you come inbound, they make useless steps that really get in the way of the buyer's experience. You're like, let's book a 15-minute qualification call. And it's like, why? You could have, buyer's experience, you can go and do that. And so it's always interesting seeing like the outbound driven when they bolt on inbound, how it changes the way the buyer's experience is really felt and how many extra steps get put in, because outbound, you had already pre-qualified. Where inbound, it's almost like a lot of companies want to have steps. Well, at Fullstory they did a really good job of getting back to me right away. So I booked my demo and they hit me really quick. And then when it came to getting my email, it made it I couldn't quite see the framework that they were using, and it seemed like it was hyper personalized and not relevant. And it made me wonder who they're serving. What is the market that they're really focused on? And I wonder, when Brooklyn was talking, is it because they're targeting all the different people in the potential market, or is it because it's inbound, they want to get more attention from different personas? And so for me, it didn't quite tie together in that full sales process of who specifically we provide the most value to. So like talking about like a total serviceable market or your TAM, what are the non-negotiables that people need to have for to see value from you? I just didn't get that through that process. I feel like Fullstory has the biggest opportunity to grow like crazy because they're doing so many things right. And I think what would actually fix the demo process would be more of whether it's Chili Piper or Service Bell or 11 Site, some type of like instant tool if they're going to deal with smaller companies. If they're not going to deal with smaller companies, then maybe go a little bit bigger, take a more like tailored approach where you're starting with a little bit more information when you do that outreach. So you're nailing the top 2 potential problem statements based on close won, close loss. Because then it starts with high value. It's so hard when you get into a demo and I'm not saying that they did this, but like, so tell me about yourself. And it's like, so why didn't you do your research? And this is the danger when you don't come with an opinion into those types of process, is that it feels like it's a make work project. And so I feel like they did a good job at getting there, but I'd love to see them up the ante on like knowing who they specifically serve, and also on their social. Their social, they had, out of the 688 employees, they had 217, and most of it was promotional reel. Honestly, it was garbage. And I don't mean, I'm sorry for everyone listening, but I just wish that people would stop using social as promotion, because engagement in public earns conversations in private. Nobody cares about you and your company. They care about the problem and the way you articulate it. And so this is the disconnection I see from content to sales, is I'm not prepped to have a good conversation. So then the conversation drags on, like me talking right now. But it's just how it all fits in. I would just love to see them really up the ante on their social and really push people to have their own voice, and start that with leadership too. Because that was one thing I didn't see between Quantum and Fullstory, is Quantum Metric had really good leadership pushing, or not like really owning their voice. I just didn't see that in Fullstory.
I love that quote. Engagement in public earns conversations in private.
That was Zoe Hartsfeld. I can't go and own that one, but I love it.
Such a
Nick's
good
got
one.
all the pull quotes this session.
Just to clarify, Nick, really quick on the inbound, you were saying that the email that the sales rep who handled the demo request sent to you was fairly generic and not super useful. Is that I just wanted to clarify.
It seemed like their framework was to go and really try to tie in as much relevance or as much personalization as possible, but without really considering relevance. I will give this rep credit though. He circled back. I wasn't going to respond back to his email, but he hit me up on social, and it was really crispy messaging, really dialed in. And he asked a really big question that made me think. And I'm like, okay, that's a best practice that needs to be done more often. It was really, really well done.
That's awesome. So how would you score on the sales/inbound?
I'd probably give it a 4.
Okay.
But there's so much potential to like jump really fast, because I think a lot of it's low-hanging fruit that would be an easy change. And, you know, they could add, like I said, that tech for inbound to go and have meetings faster and like really connect with their buyers so they're not stuck waiting. Change the way that they prep for meetings and do their demo flow. Maybe talk to more Asaline and go and do that type of deal where you don't have to do a 15-minute qualification call. And I would look at, you have great inbound, so how are you tying that into social and doing some type of lead capture or like demo flow or meeting flow from LinkedIn profiles? I think that would really win.
Did you look at the free trial at all, Nick? Like, because on the pricing page they had an alternative to sign up for a free trial, which I thought was interesting because Quantum Metric didn't, and they both serve. I think. No, that's why I was curious. That was your area, Nick.
I didn't go. It's funny that you mentioned it. It's on my form right in front of me to go do that, and it's blank.
Oh no!
I didn't mean that as a call out. I was just curious because they both clearly have like a target enterprise buyer. So it was interesting to me to see the 14-day trial as an option.
It was interesting to me. I don't know if you saw this, Nick, either, which is that there were actually a lot less, like Quantum gated a lot of stuff, and Fullstory just kind of like threw everything out there until you got to that point where apparently you want to do a free trial, but also if you wanted to talk to somebody, and I didn't mention that previously, that was really nice. Because I felt like I got to know the Fullstory product more just by like interacting with the pages before I would become an inbound lead than I did on Quantum's site, where things were sort of hidden hidden behind.
And general. That was my big picture takeaway. I was like, successful content, I think, can be equally helpful to your customers as it is to prospects. And like, that's what I feel like Fullstory hit, because there's so much on there that would be almost like a tutorial to their customers rather than just this like top of funnel, big picture play.
Totally. Sam, what did you score social again for Fullstory? I was just doing the mental math here.
6 out of 10.
6 out of 10. Well, congratulations to Fullstory for scoring a healthy 23 out of 40. That is a pretty good score. If you've ever been to one of these before, we are not kind judges. We're kind judges, I think, but maybe not generous when it comes to scoring. So, thank you to both of these companies for participating in this face-off review. Very close, obviously, some pros and cons to each of them, some rooms for improvement on each of them, and some really strong foundations on both of them. I was really impressed. I know from all the reviews today, I think we all were. So any final thoughts before we close out this power hour?
It's just interesting to see how the different companies set up their sales and how it relates. And one thing I'm really excited for is the day that me and Brooklyn don't reverse scores.
When content is really high and sales is really high? Is that what you want?
It's going to be 40 out of 40.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really has been inverse. Yeah.
It's great. Well, thank you all for attending, and a happy Tuesday to everyone who's joined us for this Content Power Hour.
Thank you, everyone. You'll see us again in a month, and we'll be releasing soon who those chosen companies are. And if you would like to be those companies, get us in the comments or shoot us a DM, and we'd be happy to take a look. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks.